That night, Paul had a dream. A Macedonian stood on the far shore and called across the sea, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." The dream gave Paul a map. We went to work at once, getting things ready to cross over to Macedonia. All the pieces had come together. We knew now for sure that God had called us to preach the good news to the Europeans. Pulling out of the harbor at Troas, we made a straight run for Samothrace. The next day, we tied up at the new city and walked from there to Philippi, the main city in that part of Macedonia, and, even more importantly, a Roman colony. We lingered there several days. On the Sabbath, we left the city and went down along the river, where we heard there was going to be a prayer meeting. We took our place with the women who had gathered there and talked to them. One woman, Lydia, who was from Thyatira and a dealer in expensive textiles, known to be a God-fearing woman. As she listened with intensity to what was being said, the Master gave her a trusting heart, and she believed. After she was baptized, along with everyone in her household, she said in a surge of hospitality, "If you're confident that I am in this with you and believe in the Master truly, come home with me and be my guests." We hesitated, but she wouldn't take no for an answer.
Gotta love Lydia. "Oh, please, come to my house. Oh, please, I insist. Oh, please." And so they did. You know, the book of the Acts of the Apostles is our book of beginnings. It's the story that tells the beginning of the world of Jesus followers, of Christianity. There's lots and lots about certain key figures. It was Peter last week, if you recall, talking about Peter traveling around, sharing with the household of Cornelius, the Roman. Now it's Paul and his companions going to Macedonia, and on the way, they're checking with the communities that have already begun, house churches that have already begun, encouraging them. And then they go somewhere new, and they keep at it. They go wherever there's a curious, eager, open heart. Just happens to be Macedonia that they go to right now. But they go with the stories and the message and the wonder and the glory of what Jesus has taught. It is inside of them, and it goes with them wherever they are. And it turns out that they go to give what they have received, but they also receive from others. In this particular story, they receive the hospitality of Lydia. And as it turns out, I believe still to this day, and it certainly was the case for Paul and Peter and Mary Magdalene and all those who traveled with the stories of Jesus in their heart, that not only did they have something to give, they had something to receive. And therefore, it was not any sort of a unequal power between the peoples in that early Christian community, those first Jesus followers. There wasn't one who controlled the narrative and controlled the power dynamics. It was a give and a receive, and a give and a take. And I believe that is the best shape for all ministry. It's about discerning the gifts of others and receiving the gifts of others, seeing the God-given gifts in others and encouraging them, and then receiving what those others give to you, that are those gifts that they are eager to give. Lydia, jumping up and down, come to my house, come to my house, come to my house, right? Cornelius begging Peter to come. Peter overcoming all of his Jewish prejudices and saying, I will go, even to your Gentile home. So Lydia, the successful businesswoman, she can't, it seems, the way I read between the lines, she can't help herself. She's so excited, so enlivened, so encouraged by the Jesus story that she feels compelled to share. And Paul and his companions, they get over it, and at last they receive the gift of herself with thanksgiving and deep gratitude. You don't know that right away because we stopped that reading right at that spot. But if you were to keep on reading in this book, the book of the Acts of the Apostles, you'd hear pretty much the next big thing that happens is that Paul and his companions are called disturbers of the peace, and they get thrown in jail, and they get beaten, and then they get out of jail, and they convert the jailer and the jailer's household, who offer them hospitality. And then they return to Lydia's house once again to get over being beaten up in jail. Got that? You see, they receive again and again the gifts that Lydia is overjoyed to share. I think it's actually pretty hard for all of us to imagine the world of those early communities when Jesus' followers were such a small community and the Jesus story was so new and strange. After all, here we are in a big Jesus story church, right? And we're in the United States of America where we have government protection to worship as we choose, where we choose, and whatever style we choose. We even have tax-exempt status to protect us in our freedom to worship in our big, beautiful space. We, all of us, live in a world that has been hearing the stories of Jesus, known about Jesus, for approximately 2,000 years. And our kids read the Bible, even if they never read it in church. They read it in the great books courses in high school and college. And all of us have heard or seen or somehow incorporated those stories into art and music and literature. Our culture is full of it. And so I thought to myself as I was pondering this text, what on earth can Lydia tell us? What can Paul tell us? We, who are so embedded in the story already, they have nothing new to say to us. Or do they? Might they? Might they have something, even so, that we are the recipients of 2,000 years of tradition? What if Lydia and Paul and the companions are not necessarily teaching us something new, but teaching us something we are apt to forget in the year 2022? Hospitality. The importance of hospitality and the aching need for community, for people to give to, and for people to share with. Especially after COVID, some of us jump into community life again with both feet. Some of us are a little more careful and cautious. But we know that in the nation we love, in our land, our people are lonely. Our nation is full of sad and frightened people who feel alone and lonely. They need that hospitality of Jesus' people. So, does that mean they need our potlucks? Maybe. We are pretty good at that. Does that mean they need our coffee on Sunday morning after church? Maybe. We're pretty good at that too. Maybe they need the Tuesday night talks, that community that gathered week after week on Zoom and grappled with racism and grappled with white supremacy and grappled with the questions of how can we be spiritual, religious, and activists all. That community that grapples together. Maybe our nation needs us in that way. These are important, though we think, shucks, it's just us. But there's also the hospitality that Jesus' people offer when we welcome refugees, when we welcome strangers and say, come in, be stranger no more. It's our welcome that we give to those who are hurting and wounded by church, those who are sick and suffering in body and in spirit. That hospitality the world needs. Not everyone gets beaten and thrown in jail like Paul, but some do. And Jesus' people hospitality needs to be there, in the jail and beyond the jail. As far as I'm concerned, some of the most important ministry by people in the history of Christianity is the ministry of hospitality and building community against loneliness, against fear, against chaos. And those communities were not made by popes and princes. They were made by people like you and me. Feeding the hungry and clothing the naked was done by men and women whose names have been forgotten. Sheltering the homeless, making room for the refugee in our communities, that's our work, and it's been the work of the church since the beginning. All those monasteries they set up in the Middle Ages, they were set up to be a safe place and a gentle welcome. They built churches not simply for the glory of God, but also as sanctuary, as refuge against violence. Down through history, Jesus' people have created safe communities for lepers and those who were diseased. They've created safe communities for orphans and widows. They've created hospitals and hospices. They've created schools and universities, centers of learning, centers of art, all these by Jesus' people, seeking to share gifts and live as one. The people who participated in this down through the years are uncounted, so many. And I think their names are often not remembered, but Lydia is. Dorcas was in our Dorcas Tabitha, was remembered just last week. They are Jesus' people who are exemplars for us, examples for us. And they show us that the household of Jesus' people is not necessarily a household made by blood or patriarchy or Roman rule. It's a household of love and welcome, of hospitality. That's the kind of household that offers gifts and also receives gifts. You know those monasteries that I just mentioned? In some of those monasteries, it is written into their very rule of life that they will greet every person as Christ, for they saw the potential of the living Christ in every guest. They would receive Christ in every guest. And those hospices and hospitals that nurtured to the dying, those people in those places knew that there, at the cusp between life and death, you find the holy presence. And you receive the gift of God's presence as gift of the dying. All those schools and universities that that we know so many have built. They were built to the glory of God as known in intellectual endeavor, and known in great art, and known in great music. They knew that if they built them, they would receive the gift of God's presence from the students, the artists, the creative ones who would come. So I wonder about you and me and us in this place. We are invited to receive the art of Karen, Diane Allison, Roger, the art of these singers, and Vern and Susan on piano. We are invited to receive the gift of song and painting. We are invited to receive the stories of our guests and our oldest members, the stories of the little ones and the stories of the newest ones. We receive through potluck ministry, and we could potentially receive through the pet blessing we're going to do in July. We are gifted and gifting. And that is the truest nature, as far as I can see, of Christian community, truest hospitality that we see in both the stranger and our best friend, our most beloved child, and the one who is brand new, the face of God, the face of Jesus. And they will give us the truest gift of themselves. And it is our vocation to give them the truest face of God that we can. You will do this. You will do this, Westminster. You do this already. You will do this into the future with Bob. You will do this because, just like it said in the call to worship that Linda read this morning, in the book of Revelation, the last book of the Christian Testament, it says, God is among mortals. Happy Easter season. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Amen.